Recording in
Hello.
progress.
That's our like intro music. Recording in progress. That's how fancy we are.
This is all done in one cut. So, yeah, low budget, one cut deal.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
All
This
right.
is just okay. I'm so excited for today.
Yes.
Elisa pitched this topic, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk about it. And this will also show how nerdy I am because this is not normal for people to be so excited about this topic.
Most people are like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I want to talk all about that for more than an hour.
Okay, so what's the topic?
The topic is cognitive dissonance, but you said it in a sentence. How was the sentence I
I
wrote it.
said mental gymnastics,
Yes.
navigating cognitive dissonance on the daily.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mental gymnastics. Yeah. Also, extra credit if you're an overthinker because this is like your life.
Yeah.
Also, me.
Yep.
It's my daily life, overthinking things, thinking things too much, getting lost in different cognitive dissonant scenarios.
Yeah. I think like people um identify that they're feeling anxiety, and sometimes it's due to cognitive dissonance, and it's just like an uncomfortable feeling. Like I equate it to a tug of war a lot, you know. And then sometimes there's like the la 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 la, like not wanting to take in new
Yeah.
information or not wanting to recognize what you need to change or something to be more congruent. But anyways, do you have like an explanation of what cognitive dissonance is?
Yes. And
Okay.
I have the most exciting fun fact for you about where
Okay.
the term came from. Do you want me to do? Well, let
Lay
me
it
start
on
with the
me.
definition. Also, I just have to say, you're right. Like in therapy, you call it a tug of war, or maybe they feel it anxiety, but like back to Freud, I feel like was like making the unseen seen.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do a lot in therapy is we
Mm-hmm.
like sit with these complex invisible inner dynamics and like bring them out and help people to like notice them so that they can resolve some of them sometimes. And that's what therapy is to me.
Yeah. Yep.
One version of it. Okay. A very basic definition from probably AI, Google. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological phenomenon where a person experiences mental discomfort due to holding two or more conflicting beliefs, values, or attitudes. It occurs when a person's behavior conflicts with their beliefs or they face new information that contradicts their current understanding.
Okay.
There she.
Lots of stuff to delve into.
Yeah. Does anything jump out to you in that definition?
Okay. Something I think of just like on a practical sense is like I bought a Honda Pilot, you know, and it was like a whole process of like financing and test driving and setting up like all these I don't know, like all these warranties and like all this stuff. Like you are neck deep in debt and neck deep into like a whole car shopping process, right? Landed on the Honda Pilot, boom. Then, something pops up. Oh, Honda Pilots suck.
Yes. New
And then,
information.
yeah. And so I am like, I'm going to pretend like I didn't see that because it would be so hard for me to reverse like that whole decision that like all this energy and time and money was put into. And
Yeah.
so I'm just going to be like, you know what? I don't want to see that. Instead, I'm going to Google like positive reviews for the Honda Pilot to like re-talk me back into having made the right decision, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what jumps out to me, just like as a practical thing of like new information pops up and it's like, oh no, like it's too late, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I Googled, or I actually, honestly, I chat GPT'd the other psychology terms associated with this, and that
Uh-huh.
makes me think of confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Like that is like what we use to make the cognitive dissonance go away. We just like get the information that aligns with our pre-existing idea so that we reduce, like we put on blinders.
Mhm.
Your Honda Pilot's a good example because that's like it's a big decision, but it's not like a worldview or some sort of other thing.
Well, people do that all the time with like choosing their tribe and like people they hang out with and stuff like that. Like that's like confirmation bias too. It's easier to like stick with the same beliefs and like stick in your comfort zone when the other people are reinforcing that, or where the other people are vocal about rejecting the other, it can just keep you more in.
What percentage of the population do you think knows that that even exists as a psychological tendency that all humans have?
Confirmation bias.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh.
Or,
Well,
yeah,
uh,
they're even aware of it existing.
well, the first time I heard about confirmation bias was in my undergrad. We had to take this like logic class, and they talked about like all the logical fallacies and stuff like that, or like how to look for logical fallacies in a debate and things.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I was in my 20s when I learned about it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a late bloomer. Maybe my public education did not serve me well. I don't know.
Well,
But
that's why I'm asking. I don't think it's taught as much as it should be in our current like cultural norms for what we teach kids. Like these kinds of things are so useful for our adult lives and our all of our lives, but
yeah. Yep.
everyone should know what that is, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah. It's like, I'm a Packers fan. And so if I see someone that's also a Packers fan, like I kind of assume that they have similar political beliefs as me, or I assume that they have similar, like, beliefs about religion as me, or I'm like, oh, they probably have kids in elementary school too. Like, it's just like stuff that's totally unrelated to being a Packers fan.
Yeah.
So if I go up to someone and I'm like, oh, how about that game? And they like blow me off. I'm like, you can't be rude. You're a Packers fan. Like that, that's like cognitive dissonance with the confirmation bias of
Yeah.
like, Packers fans are nice. They're great people, like if I saw someone like beating someone up or whatever and they had a Packers shirt on, I would not be able to handle that. I'd be like, Packers fans don't do that. We are kind
Yes.
and we care about people, like
Yeah.
meeting a transphobic Packers fan. For me, I'm like, they don't match up because I love the Packers, and I'm not I'm not a transphobic person. I'm a super ally, How can a
Yeah.
Packers fan be transphobic at the same time?
That
But
sounds like cognitive dissonance.
it is. It is. How do we move past it?
But it's like it's good that you have the tools to recognize it because I think our brains, like we want to think of our brains as like a supercomputer and we're like all complex and we can hold the nuance and our brains like naturally go to all of that complexity, but I think our brains are more like calculators. They're
Yeah.
like data doesn't match? No. They're just like boom, boom, tossing all of this information. And we want to believe that we're all like past that, but we're not. Like I know my brain does it too. I know
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yep.
not a Packers fan, but for sure there's other things that I'm sure that would be relevant.
Well, I mean, you've been standing on the streets holding these campaign signs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, like, you're standing with like fellow Democrats, basically, and
Yeah.
so you make a lot of assumptions about these people.
True. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, what might some of the assumptions be that you feel like you have in common with them, but like you actually haven't checked on it?
Yeah, I think that's very valid. I mean, politics are so polarized right now.
Mhm.
Actually, I wanted to talk about the cognitive dissonance for all political groups right now. Like,
Oh yeah.
how that plays in. How it's easy for my brain to do it is to look at the other people holding the other signs and to be like, they have cognitive dissonance working. What's very hard is for me to look inwardly and be like, how am I? Because I'm an overthinker, I do think about this a lot. And I'm like, how am I dismissing ideas based on them not fitting my narrative? But one thing that happened was a campaign flyer went out about the opponent and they were claiming like that they got all this passed these bills to like raise teacher pay in Tennessee. Okay. And I was like, that's not true. I've Googled it. Like they're just lying. They're liars. They're liars.
A
And
politician was lying?
I know. And I was so
What?
like, this is just what they do. They're just bald-faced lying. And then I found out that there was a bill passed where like Tennessee is trying to raise the average teacher salary to 50K by 2026. And I was like, I had to take a minute and I'd be like, I'm in favor of that bill. That is a Republican sponsored bill. And I had to digest something that didn't feel good. And then I was still looking for like, yeah, but how is this still? And then I found out the average teacher salary is still like 76K. So we're still like way behind, even with the bill. But it was hard for me to admit, like, I support that bill. It's a step in the right direction. So my brain
Good
didn't,
for you.
my calculator brain was like, sad face, sad face, sad face.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw my husband likes to watch these YouTubers that like go to Trump rallies and interview people and stuff like that. And so these people are at a rally for a certain candidate, and the guy interviewing them had this candidate's autobiography. Okay. And apparently in the autobiography, the candidate had said that he sees Martin Luther King Jr. as a communist. Okay. And so he was going up to these people, do you support this guy? Yeah. And it's like, what are your thoughts on that? He said Martin Luther King Jr. is a communist. And they're like, what? Like that doesn't match. What's up with that? And he's like, yeah, it says it right here in his autobiography. And the lady was like, well, I'll have to do more research on that. And like, I don't think we have enough information,
Yeah.
shutting it down completely, like, la, 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 la. And the
Yes.
guy's like, well, it's written right here. Look, like this is exactly what it says. Well, I haven't read the whole book, so like I can't say yes or no whether that's going on or not. And I would need to look at the source and like really research it. And the guy's like, well, here's the source. It's the guy's autobiography. Like you can hold it. Like it's written by
Yeah.
him.
I
Like,
already have it in front
yeah,
of you.
yep. And so it was creating like, okay, I'm a diehard supporter, but something isn't matching up here. And you have a few responses. You can act like it's not happening, ignore the information, or you can change your behavior. You can question it. You can, look into it further. But like most people, they don't, when they say, well, I need to research that further, that's kind of like putting the blinders on.
Yeah.
Um, and I did that. So when Joe Biden, before he passed on the candidacy to Kamala Harris, he was just he was saying stuff that was not coherent. A lot of Republicans were like, he's not fit for office and all this stuff. But in my mind, I could not vote for Trump. So I was like, I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch these videos where he's, incoherent, where he's like pausing and like shutting down because he has my vote, regardless. And so I was like, I don't want to see it, because
Yeah.
my mind was made up. There was no alternative.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stomach, like, okay, this is embarrassing. Like, I don't know how I'm going to vote for someone that is going through this. And like, okay, again, going back to our previous episode, so much empathy and compassion, obviously, for, someone as they age and, being in the spotlight like that, like a lot of compassion. But at the same time, it was like embarrassing. And I did not want to watch any of that. That could
Yeah.
contradict my like set voting decision.
I love that you can on like it's hard to say honestly that you did it too.
I did. Yeah, I
But
did.
just like hearing you say it is so like normalizing to know that like we should all admit we're doing this. That you did not want to hear information that was going to make it more difficult for you to make that decision that you had already doubled down on.
Yeah.
Like I've already decided, which is like so key, I think, politically. And my confusion is like, how in the world can people have not seen the videos and the hate speech and the just like putrid nature of like what Trump has done? And I'm like, I don't understand how. But then when you give that example, I'm like, that's how. They've already decided and they're
Yep.
not listening to the other content. It's not getting through.
Yeah. I know about cognitive dissonance. I know about confirmation bias. Like I know when there's a logical fallacy going on and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
for me, the alternative was a lot worse than just sticking with like what I could. And I think people on the other side think that too.
Yeah.
For them, it's like, that's a no brainer. There's absolutely nothing you can do or say for me to change my mind. Even if someone's like, but this doesn't align with you though, and that's what they said.
Yeah.
Mm,
I
la, la, la.
know.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we get so frustrated with each other is we're like, but I've shown you the clearest picture. Like it's very obvious that there's like clear data here.
Mhm.
And that it doesn't matter because there's a psychological and emotional element that is like at play underneath the surface that we don't understand or we don't like think about.
Yeah. I think so many people right now, like safety is a concern. For people that are on both sides. So whether those concerns are founded in truth or not, or like actual, likelihood to happen and stuff, like I think people are just kind of like choosing out of a place of fear or out of a case of a worst case scenario and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so it's like, well, one side's worst case scenario is way worse than the other side.
Yeah.
But yeah, people just like decide stuff out of fear, I think. And so it's like sitting with some of the gray or entertaining, another worldview or something like that.
Yeah.
That can kind of feel like top part of Maslow's hierarchy when the bottom part is so threatened.
Yes.
Yeah.
All are trying to feel safer.
Yeah.
The difference to me is that some of us have a fear of something rational and some of us have a fear of something irrational.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
my bias, but like I
Mm-hmm.
think that some of the fear mongering is irrational, not based on data,
Mm-hmm.
whereas some of the fear is like, of course I would think that, like I'm a human being with my own
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah.
Um, but the beginning of cognitive dissonance, the origin story of the term, is based on fear of a irrational belief.
Oh,
And it's related to cults and UFOs.
okay. Yeah. So the type of thing where like the thing they said was going to happen actually didn't happen.
Yes, a failed
Okay.
prophecy.
Okay.
Can you
Failed
believe that? I have to tell you. Okay, I
prophet.
have to tell you.
Yeah, do it.
Okay, so if you listened, listener, to our last episode, we talked about cults, specifically Heaven's Gate. And I'm telling you, Elisa, I've never heard of this cult, but it was around the same time, 1956. Is that a similar timeline?
Up to Heaven's Gate.
Yeah,
No,
probably
I think
later.
they started doing all their stuff in the 70s, maybe 60s. I'm not sure, but um, and then like everything that happened with them was like in the 90s. So
Okay, so this is way before that then,
yeah.
several decades. So Leon Festinger is an American social psychologist who originated the idea of cognitive dissonance. Okay. He was studying with two other guys. They were studying a UFO religion in Chicago called the Seekers. And the Seekers believed in an imminent apocalypse. So the originator of the Seekers, I think I wish I had like better details, but I think it was a woman and she was doing something called automatic writing. Have you ever heard of automatic writing?
No.
It's interesting. It's like something in the psychic realm where like you are using your hand to scribble things down, but you believe that like a spirit or a ghost is sort of like a Ouija board, like directing your hand. So,
Like some writing that might appear on a wall.
yes.
Okay.
What, what wall?
That's a Bible reference.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Dust off your files.
yeah. Also, Moses and Joseph Smith, they all believe they were like writing, it's all the same thing. Okay. So they follow this cult who has like it's one of those ones where like on this day at this time the UFO is going to come down and turns out it doesn't happen.
Mm,
And so they study this psychology of the members because a lot of the members doubled down
yeah.
after the failed prophecy and then they studied that as cognitive dissonance. um, this chart that they have is the conditions for increased fervor after disconfirmation. So not only did cognitive dissonance like not widen it, they became more like fundamentalist and like more extreme in their views after the failed prophetic date had passed, which is
Mm,
really interesting. And I think a good data point for how frustrating it is, back to our convo about politics, but like it's so frustrating that the data doesn't work. But here we have this example of people who literally believed in like a UFO coming, and they only got more rigorous as the data disconfirmed their beliefs.
Yeah. It like with those groups and stuff like that, or like Heaven's Gate, for example, the all their eggs are in one basket,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I am familiar with a certain concept of like if you like verbally share something with someone, like I think of like in my background, if you go up, you share your testimony or something like that. It's a lot it's a lot harder to like negate it and be like, oh, never mind, than to like actually drive that point home, double down on it, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, having all your eggs in one basket, especially when it's like your belongings and like shoot, did I just donate like all of my net worth and all of my belongings to this cause that was actually a farce or something like that?
Yeah.
Like, you have the choice of, recognizing that. And I think there's a lot of shame involved for a lot of people that participate and stuff. Um, or like, okay, I'm gonna walk away from that and start over. Like,
Yeah.
as a middle-aged person or as an older person, like, yeah, um, you have kind of like safety involved with like your community. And so leaving that, like, that is hard.
I agree with
Or
you.
well, then people start creating new beliefs of like, oh no, we were wrong. It wasn't actually 1956. It's actually going to happen in 1965. So you just bought yourself like 9 more years
Yeah.
to like be in the safety of that community and to, be developing some of the beliefs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That reduced the cognitive dissonance for now, but it's
And,
probably not going to happen then either.
and every time that that person doubles down further, their detachment from reality gets wider. Like, like the first time it's already out there, but then it's like, this is really out there. There's a funnel pulling you away from reality.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. That's tricky. Like when you share something or you're so public about your beliefs and stuff like that, like it makes it really hard to go back on it when you get new information.
Yeah, that's different from your pilot example, your Honda Pilot. Like a decision about, a car purchase is still big and financial, but like when it comes to religion and politics and cult groups, like that's a high commitment, high stakes situation. And you're right, like their whole community is based in it, usually lots of volunteer hours, lots of money. Politics too, like you think about like how much money people donate, how much time people donate, how much, emotion that they have plugged in. It's makes it more difficult for your brain to stay rational, which is
Yeah.
super disappointing.
Like a car that can be undone, basically. But you being completely detached from everything except this group,
Yeah.
like that's really hard to undo. It involves like starting over with $0 in your pocket, you know,
Yeah.
or $5.75.
I caught that reference this time.
Oh
I
my
got
God.
it. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's like you can see cognitive dissonance at like very deep levels of like highly severe consequence. And then also like in our daily lives, like that's not convenient to think. So let's move on.
Yeah.
Did you have any more
Mhm.
examples?
Yeah. If you would pause no, no, don't pause it. Like just cut this
Oh,
part
I
out.
can pause it.
Oh,
She's good. Go.
okay. So this is gonna like date this video for sure because we're talking about stuff that's like right now, right before the election.
Right.
We in this moment don't know who's going to win. Like so if anyone's listening to this after November of 2024, like you have a lot more information than we do.
We should just release this one faster
Yeah,
and skip the order.
sure.
Okay.
Even though we're referencing the previous episode with the
Well,
575. Anyways. Okay. So Trump had this comedian that dissed Hispanic people, Puerto Ricans specifically. Like he said that Puerto Rico is a floating island of garbage, basically. just like ridiculous and terrible
Yeah.
racist insults. Okay.
Yes, very much.
So I'm thinking, all right, number one, he probably lost some votes, from that. Lots of people speaking out about how offensive that was and stuff like that. That's one group of people who haven't voted early. There's
Yeah.
a second group of people that voted early and they're like, yeah, my vote's for Trump, like we were saying a moment ago. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't want to hear anything, blah, blah, blah. Those people that voted early, all right, they cast their vote for Trump. Then this story comes out that, shoot, I'm Puerto Rican and I voted for Trump, and look what he just said about my homeland,
Yeah.
you know? Like,
Cognitive dissonance.
that's really hard. Like, you got ripped off. You just got gypped. Your vote was stolen from you,
Yeah.
and you can't go and take it back and change it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So for those people that already voted early and stuff, you know, a couple of choices. I don't want to hear it. Like, I don't want to watch the video. I don't want to hear about what happened. I don't want to hear what Trump has to say about it. Ignoring all the Puerto Rican celebrities that are coming out and like
Yeah.
expressing their disdain for that. La 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 la. That's one approach. The other approach is a way more vulnerable one of, I am hurt. I got defrauded. If I could go back, I would do it differently. Like, having your vote taken from you, or I don't know if I have words for that, like
Yeah.
you got bamboozled, like
Yeah.
you voted for something that turned out not to be true. Well, to argue, like, I feel like it was the same thing the whole time, but still, I mean, there's people that vote that way because of certain aspects of the Republican ideology or stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then they get like up and insulted instead of thanked for their support. Like,
Right.
that sucks.
Well, it's like you can have earmuffs on and you can like not pay attention to all the other hate speech or the hate speech against women or whatever. But when it comes to your actual identity as a Puerto Rican, you're like, hold on. Like that's the data that gets through the cognitive dissonance of like,
Yeah.
I actually heard that and it did not feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you have to sit with, who knows who won the election, right? But you have to sit with that until the next election comes around and let
Yeah.
that inform your vote. But I mean, the emotional reaction to something like that of like, I voted for you and that's how you respond, like insulting me directly.
Yeah.
Uh yeah, that takes a lot to sit with. That's really hard.
I know. It's definitely a growth scenario. I'm
Yeah.
not saying I want it for anyone, but you have to learn to deal with that. Either you're going to have to deny, 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 deny to the very end, or at some point you have to wake up in broad daylight, look around, and figure out that like stuff happens. We make mistakes. We change our mind and like be okay with that and find a way to be okay with that and find a way
Mm-hmm.
to cope.
Yes.
That's what I think this has a little piece of deconstruction in it. But like even political deconstruction or like someone like me, like I voted Republican for most of my life and switched parties, went independent for a while and then switched parties in the last 8 years. And that takes something. It
Yeah.
takes looking around, recognizing that like I've changed my mind and this doesn't work for me, and then doing something different. But like if you've never done that, this is what always gets to me. It's like I don't care what it is that you've changed your mind about in life. I just want to hear someone tell me an example of a time where they've changed their mind. And if they don't have one, I want them to tell me why.
Mm. Yeah.
Why? Why have you never changed from what your parents taught you to believe? What do you think that says?
Yeah. There's another YouTuber out there. I think his channel is called Surrounded, if I'm not mistaken. We'll have to put the link below. But
Okay.
he is a professional debater, basically. So he'll put himself in the middle and surround himself with 20 people that believe the opposite. Okay, so it was like him being a Harris supporter, basically surrounded by 20 Trump supporters. So
Yeah.
he'll bring up a topic, someone will sit in the hot seat or whatever, and like everyone else is listening to these people. And so you're just like watching people, are they potentially changing their mind and stuff like that. And putting I think putting yourself in those situations where you are open minded or kind of like holding your beliefs in an open hand, allowing someone else to examine them and, talk with you about them and stuff like that is a lot different from like holding your beliefs back here. Like, no, I'll tell you about them, but you can't look, like you can't find
Yeah.
holes in this and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's like that type of unapproachable perfection or protection, sorry, unapproachable protection that a lot of people approach these subjects with. It's like, I'm not going to change any of this, but I'm going to tell you what you need to change,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want that in my life. Like if we could do a debate in here, it's a good exercise. Like, because to me, I'm like, I need to learn how to regulate my emotions enough to stay logical and hear what they're saying. And instead, like, I feel myself, going there. And I know what that does is it's like not making me think clearly. And so, like, the more I engage in that kind of conversation, I think the better I am at like knowing why I believe what I believe.
Yeah. I have a hard time because like conversations tend to move really fast to me, and even if I say, okay, like I need to slow down, I need to think about this for a second. And so that depending on who you're talking to, you can really get run over by a train, if you're like, okay, I need to think or something. Like, because
Yeah.
sometimes in those spaces, there's no space to think or to prepare or to look stuff up. It's just, especially like a professional debater, sometimes it's like, well, that's a fallacy built on a fallacy, built on a fallacy. So I just tore down everything you said. And it's like, I need to construct my point again because I like, I really believe in what I'm saying, and it just got destroyed. Now I look dumb, and my brain's not working fast enough.
I know.
Like I
I
get intimidated with like the idea of debates and stuff like that. I was on the speech team. I was not on the debate team.
I was not on either, and now it's like one of those midlife things where you're like, what would it be like?
Yeah, like you want to make an adult speech team just like in your city or something. Yeah.
Yes. I told you I'm going to those weird like atheist Christian meetups because it's
Yeah.
supposed to just be like a friendly conversation. And it actually has been. It's been really good to go. It's been good for me. It's hard to find because like what you're saying, like I think it's hard to find people who are like, sign me up because most of us like do not want to do that. But I
Hmm.
do. And I agree with you that like some of it is a sharing of ideas, but sometimes if you're a really good debater, like you can just win, but it doesn't mean anything. You win at debating. You don't win at like we've actually shared our ideas.
Yeah. Or like the person walks away in the exact same spot that you found them in. Yeah.
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 The
Hmm.
only way I know to win really is to be like, I'm actually a human being. I'm a decent person. Here's my story. And then like
Yeah.
cross bridges that way. I am not a good, like, I'm not a fast thinker, like you're saying. I could probably
Mm.
never win. Maybe, anything's possible even in midlife.
Yeah. Anything's possible. Um, so you know how you go to those like not verses. You go to those like meetings with like Christians, atheists, and stuff like that. So you tend to be like more aligned with the atheist side of those conversations.
I mean, only because I don't have a choice in the terminology. I think when people think atheists are like, there's definitely no God. That is not how I feel. It's agnosticism. It's like, I actually don't feel like I know. But yes, I would definitely align more with like a worldview of someone who is an atheist and someone who is like a born again evangelical Christian at this
Okay.
point.
So you are holding your not picket signs, you're holding your election signs. You're on the Democrat side. There's someone holding like a Trump sign. They are holding stuff for the Republican candidates in your area and stuff like that. And you guys come together over some hot chocolate, and this person's like, Yeah, I've been thinking about going to these Christian atheist meetings. I tend to, this Republican person, right? MAGA
Okay.
hat and everything. I
Yeah.
tend to be more on the agnostic side of things because I think high control religion is a huge problem and it just it doesn't do anything for our society. And, religion causes a lot of harm. And yeah, I'm looking for kind of like a space to have these open conversations where there's no agenda and people can,
Yeah.
express their beliefs and just gain a better mutual understanding.
Yeah.
How do you hear all of that when someone is wearing like the enemy's uniform?
Well, I think it's statistically very unlikely. But I think part of me would be like super excited
Okay.
just to have I always love talking. I love talking on all the taboo topics. Let's talk religion. Let's talk politics. Let's talk about all of it. And I'd be like, tell me more. I'm so excited to hear your story. That's so interesting. We share this in common. And then I'd be like, very curious. This would be my curiosity towards them is like, how do you reconcile like some of the things that the Republican Party seems to be platforming right now with your views on humanity or whatever doesn't work with high control? Like I would just dive into the deep end of that person's psychology and be like, I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah.
Tell me
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
I actually did have a conversation today with a campaign manager of a Republican candidate, and they said they were old school Republican, old school, like I think that they said Abraham Lincoln to me, like
What?
the oldest old school, like very, very, very old. And I was like, oh, interesting. Well, what is it that how do you feel about the Republican Party now? Because it's changed a lot. Like this is
Yeah.
not an old school. And he was like, well, we still share Christianity in common. And I was like, interesting. There's a lot of Christian Democrats, didn't say that. And then I asked them their story, and they converted from Methodist Christianity growing up that way. And in the past 2 years, they've been like an Orthodox Christian, which is like there's like Roman Catholic and Orthodox Christianity, and the Orthodox claims that they're like the oldest version. So very, very different than evangelical Christianity. And I thought that I was so sort of similar. Like I was very surprised by that. And I would have gone to coffee or hot chocolate with that person and been like, tell me more.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's like someone can be conservative politically, yet liberal in a religious sense,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes. People are complicated.
They are. Yeah.
See, you kind of did a little magic trick on my brain there because I get into the like emotional us versus them, my cognitive dissonance is kicking in. But when you put me in a mindset of like, listen to this one person, and then like my interest level is so disarming to all of my automatic thoughts.
Yeah.
Oh, people are really complicated and they
Yeah.
have,
I was trying to like put cognitive dissonance into like a first person viewpoint,
yeah.
that you could relate to. Cause like I know you and I know what would just like rope you in and be like, yes, or it's kind of like I don't know. I feel like for us with our background, it's like I found my people, you want to put all your eggs into that basket, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like there's stuff that doesn't match exactly, and like that's cognitive dissonance. That's the definition.
The opposite of that story has happened to me, like standing holding a Democratic sign. And a lot of the people I've talked to have a similar like perspective on religion, but I've talked to somebody who has a very different perspective, and that was cognitive dissonant. They were
Mhm.
very zealous for a very fundamentalist form of Christianity. And they were telling me they have cognitive dissonance, but I was like, talking about the Bible and like what the Bible says and God's authority, and like the language to me was like, oh, this is not my language anymore. But we were standing on the same side politically, so
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm glad that there's people that can present that from like an informed theological perspective and like speak the language of people, to whom that is like an end all be all politically for them. Yeah, I think those voices are really important. Thank goodness we have diversity in this world.
Isn't it great?
Usually.
Well, it's good for our brains,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, and
Yeah.
evolution.
Sometimes it's hard, like when it's your family members that are presenting so diversely, like in their schools of thought or in their ideologies and stuff like that. Sometimes it's hard when it's like family because you feel like
Oh.
more of an obligation to
Yeah.
them or something. Yeah.
I like heard that phrase growing up, like we don't talk politics and religion at this
Mhm.
Thanksgiving table. And I was like, oh, okay. And like I could not, could we not all now as like adults understand that phrase any more clearly?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so difficult with family.
Well,
Well, there it is.
there it is. Fun facts and all.
I would, if we had another episode, I would talk about how internal family systems therapy model works well with cognitive dissonance. So write that.
That that can be listened to on our next episode for our listener.
Oh, we should. If we're going to do one on Monday, we could just dive back in.
Yeah, why not? We have all the time in the world. There's no prophecy that we believe in at this point that a UFO is gonna come. So
We are
we
all
have
going to
time.
die. We've covered that in
We are
episode,
gonna die. We're
but
gonna die, yet we have time until then.
okay. Well, I'll see you on Monday and we'll talk more about it.
Yes. See you Monday.
Okay. Have a good day.